Good day, Australia. My name's Felicella, and I'm a former drug user in Vancouver, British Columbia, who had to be brought back to life 6 times. Obviously, we have many complex challenges and unaddressed societal issues, which is, causing the catastrophic nature of the crisis that we're involved in, which is predominantly caused by the unregulated toxic drug supply, where 6 people are dying every single day in British Columbia to the poison drug supply that contains fentanyl, benzos, nitazines, and other vet drugs that are in them. We also have a major housing crisis in the province of British Columbia as well, where people are struggling with homelessness and poverty. And we also have services to reduce those harms that are in our society, such as harm reduction measures and treatment and detox measures. The challenge with all of this is that there's many people who are using these toxic drugs that do not struggle with an addiction, but they're just casual intermittent substance users, and who are consuming their substances on the weekend, but they don't know what they're consuming. Sometimes it could be cocaine, and sometimes it could be cocaine mixed with fentanyl, and that is catastrophic for an opiate naive user. So we have all these challenges in our society, but the major impacts of all of it is that we just haven't been able to adapt the policies to change as fast as the toxic drug supply, and that's sadly why we are in the challenges that we're facing. And it's not just in Vancouver, it's right across North America. And so a timely response is to make sure that we have scaled up harm reduction programs such as supervised consumption sites, access to safer alternatives such as hydromorphone or heroin programs to remove people from using that toxic drug supply. And then also to people to have access to detox and treatment services. And what a lot of people often believe with harm reduction is that it enables people to continue using substances. This is actually incorrect. What harm reduction does is enable people to actually live to hopefully one day figure out a pathway to recovery or a better pathway of wellness. But people don't recover when they're dead. And so having supervised consumption sites and access to safer supply programs are vital in saving people's lives and reducing the harms caused by the unregulated toxic drug supply. We have in the downtown east side where we are right now is that we have many complex challenges in a community, but predominantly this is the lowest poverty district in Canada. And so when you have poverty and people struggling with intergenerational trauma, you have people looking to distract themselves from what their circumstances are. I truly always say this to people when I'm doing talks is one thing is that, are you happy or are you distracting yourself from sadness? Because in my life, I was really distracting myself from the sadness more than I was happy. And that sadness came from struggling with addiction, struggling with undiagnosed learning disabilities, struggling with the lack of housing, struggling with the lack of support. And then people saying these simple slogans like stop using drugs or get off drugs. Sure, it sounds very simplistic, but it's very challenging because I get off the drugs many times throughout my life. And I'd have a few better things such as a bed or a place to sleep or some housing. Unfortunately, what didn't get better was how I felt about myself as a person from the trauma and the abuse that I endured as a child. And so it took me many years to deal with the trauma and not knowing that I had ADHD until I was 38. So once I put the pieces together that I was burying the trauma to not deal with it, the drugs were the solution to the trauma. Once I started to understand who Guy was and the undiagnosed learning challenges that I faced, I started to put the pieces of the puzzle together, and then I was able to, treat the addiction that I was struggling with for 31 years. So from the age of 12 till I was 43, I used drugs, and I wasn't a social drug user. I was a get-wasted drug user. I didn't use drugs to fit in. I used drugs to numb pain for my life. And now it may be different from other people's lives, but predominantly anybody that struggles with an addiction struggles with childhood trauma. And so if we don't treat the underlying issues as well, then people aren't going to recover. And you can't expect somebody to walk in through the front door of a treatment facility and never look back in their lives, because that didn't happen in my life and many others. It's a chronic relapsing condition. And if we don't have a harm reduction safety net that lays underneath the recovery services, then when people go back to use those substances, sadly they die. And so one of the biggest things is the tremendous amount of stigma that exists in our society of how we view people who use substances, which is the main driver of self-stigma and shame that I felt as a substance user, which hinders me from reaching out and asking you for help and support, which drives me to use in isolation and in dark shadows of places. And sadly, I don't recover because I die. And so take it from a guy who had to be brought back to life 6 times. I needed a tremendous amount of support from community for decades to get me to the place. And today, I have an amazing life. I have almost 12 years of sobriety. I have a family. I have 3 beautiful children. I went from homeless to a homeowner. I have a career. But really, the reason why I do what I do today is so I educate high school students, galas, conferences globally, in the hopes to share my story of overcoming all these challenges, that people don't fall down the same path that I did. And if you do fall down the same path that I did, it's okay, because there is support and there's people that care, like myself and many others. You just have to find the right people to support you, and hopefully you do. So keep up the good work out there in Australia, and I hope to be out there one day soon. Thanks for listening.